Good afternoon, a few minutes late, and welcome to the February 16, 2024 meeting of the Rotary Club of Beavercreek. Thanks to our greeters who greeted today. David Brandenburg. Chief Fiorito was supposed to, so hopefully he's not out on anything too serious. Okay. And thanks to Eric for getting us set up. Thanks to Pete Bales, Mark Weinstein, and Mike Zwick for our great programs, and Jim Gundel for taking care of our website. Denny Jarvie, will you please come up and provide us with an invocation?
Good afternoon. Would you please join me in prayer? So, Holy Creator, it's good to recognize how different we are. Our talents, our dreams, our backgrounds, and our occupations. It's also good to know that when you created each of us, you broke the mold. No one is exactly alike of anybody else. Even our thumbprint and our voice tracks tell how unique we are. Yet we thank you that we take these differences and mobilize them for the good of Rotary and our community. In our differences, we can think the same thoughts and move together towards a common goal. Bless us as we meet together. Thank you for our individuality and also for our common bond. Amen.
Thank you, Denny. And Joe Jenkins, do you have a secretary's report for us? Yeah. Denny, will you introduce your guest?
I have as my guest, Mike.
Okay. All right. That's our secretary's report. Thanks for the brevity. I appreciate that. Don Adams, and I would let you all know that his position as of July is open. So the sergeant as of next week. We're looking for, if you want to do a tryout, we could have Rotary's Got Talent or something like that.
Sure.
Yes,
A low bar. It is a low bar. So today is February 16th, 2024. It is the 47th day of the year. It's amazing. Seemed like just yesterday was the 7th day. So there's 319 days that remain in this year. Today we celebrate Daytona Pole Day. So, Do a Grouch a Favor Day. Innovation Day. National Almond Day. And National Tartar Sauce Day. And there weren't a lot of celebrations for the day, but the week has a bunch of them. So this week we also, it's a celebration of Love Week. Girl Scout Cookie Weekend. Hey. Great American Pizza Day. I wish Brandon were here. It's a great backyard bird count week. International Flirting Week. Jello Week. It is Kraut and Frankfurter Week. As we all know, it's Lent this week. So, and there's Make Mine Chocolate Week. National Condom Week. Followed by National Date Week. National New Idea Week. National Secondhand Wardrobe Week. That's kind of what I live with every day. So, and then we go along with the one earlier, the National Week of Chastity. I don't make these up. On this day in history, in 600, Pope Gregory the Great decreed that saying "God bless you" is a great response to a sneeze. In 1659, the first known check was written, and it's now on display at Westminster Abbey.
In 1838, Kentucky passed a law forbidding women to attend school under conditions. I don't know what those conditions were. In 1852, the Studebaker Brothers Wagon Company established the precursor to the automobile manufacturer. So Henry Ford wasn't first. In 1861, Abraham Lincoln stopped his train in Westfield on his way to Washington to thank an 11-year-old Grace Bedell in person for her advice to grow a beard to gain more votes. In 1868, the Benevolent and Protective Order of Elks was formed. In 1880, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers was formed. In 1883, Ladies' Home Journal began publishing in the United States. And in 1909, the first subway car with side doors went into service in New York City. My question with that is, how did they get into it before? From the top, that's the only thing I can think of. In 1914, they had the first airplane flight from LA to San Francisco. Cool. In 1923, Howard Carter opened the inner burial chamber of the Egyptian pharaoh Tutankhamun and found the sarcophagus. In 1932, the first patent for a tree was issued to James Markham for a peach tree. In 1946, the first commercially designed helicopter was tested in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And in 1968, the first 911 phone system went into effect in Haleyville, Alabama. So, and now we're about to change it again. In our club, we have a birthday on February 13th, Jim Gendel.
Anniversary was just 12.
Well, I have you for a birthday too. No, I'm sorry, James Rudd. James Rudd. I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong one.
But it's great anyway.
Yes, anyhow. And member anniversaries, Jim Rudd is 24 years, Dan Tobias 18 years. And there is a wedding anniversary on the 12th. Jim Gundle.
Yes.
Thought I'd come up with a couple of interesting facts. The longer I do this, the harder it is to come up with these things. So, Fruit Loops are all the same flavor. No matter what the colors are, they're all of flavor called fruit flavor, F-R-O-O-T, which describes a blend of fruit flavors. Anne Franklin and Martin Luther King were both born in 1929. January 15th for King and June 12th for Frank. At 45 degrees latitude, Seattle is further north than Toronto and Montreal, meaning that 64% of Canadians live south of Seattle. During the First World War, France lost about 1,360,000 soldiers. In contrast, the United States has recorded 1,350,000 military deaths total over every year since 1775. World War I was not a good war for France. And if you think The Walking Dead is a straight up fiction, well, it is, but the government wants to be prepared for a real life version anyhow. The 31-page counter zombie dominance plan for Con Plan 8888-11 was designed in 2011. And just in case you think it was a weird bureaucratic humor, the first line reads, "This plan was not actually designed as a joke."
That seems scary.
Yeah. Eventually, the day on Earth will be 25 hours long. The Earth's speed as it orbits the sun is not a fixed rate, and no matter how constant it may seem to us, it actually is slowing more over time. The length of the day will become 25 hours in about 175 million years. So don't toss your clocks yet. There are more trees on Earth than stars in the galaxy. There are about 3 trillion trees on Earth, but only 300 to 400 billion stars in the Milky Way. There is an internal deodorant that makes it so your gas and your poop don't stink. And Las Vegas Strip really isn't in Las Vegas. It's actually in Paradise, which is a township surrounding Las Vegas. They weren't allowed to put casinos in the city of Las Vegas because they wanted to keep it pure and whatever. That's gone. One Sunday afternoon, President Coolidge was returning to the White House after attending church. He'd gone alone, so upon arrival, Mrs. Coolidge inquired, "Was the sermon good?" "Yes," he answered. "What was it about?" "Sin." "What did the minister say?" "He was against it." Sounds like a conversation I've had in my life. Schoolmaster, this makes the 5th time I've had to punish you this week. What do you have to say for yourself? The young boy says, "Thank God it's Friday." It was the minister that delivered a sermon in 10 minutes one Sunday morning, and it was about half of his usual time. He explained, "I regret to inform you that my dog, who is very fond of eating paper, ate the portion of my sermon which I was unable to give this morning." After the service, a visitor from another church shook hands with the preacher and as he was leaving, and said, "So, if that dog of yours has any pups, I would sure like to get one for my minister." And then my husband was in the kitchen. He said, "Hey, I broke glass in the kitchen." Wife said, "I'm coming with the broom." Husband said, "It's not that urgent. You can come on foot." The North guys, Fred and Sam went to the movies. A few minutes after it started, Fred heard Sam rustling around and he seemed to be searching the floor under his seat. "What are you doing?" asked Fred. Sam, a little grumpy by this time, said, "I had a condom in my mouth and I dropped it out and I can't find it." Fred told him, "Forget about it, because it's too dirty down there." He said, "But I got to, my teeth are in it." One night at Cheers, remember the Cheers TV sitcom, Cliff Cleveland said to his buddy Norm Peterson, "Well, you see, Norman, it's like this. A herd of buffalo can only move as fast as the slowest buffalo. And when the herd is hunted, it is the slowest and weakest ones at the back that are killed first. This is a natural selection. It's good for the herd as a whole, because the general speed and health of the whole group keeps improving by the regular killing of the weakest members. In much the same way, the human brain can only operate as fast as the slowest brain cells. Excessive intake of alcohol, as we know, kills brain cells. But naturally, it takes the slowest and weakest brain cells first. In this way, regular consumption of beer eliminates the weaker brain cells, making the brain a faster and more efficient machine. That's why we always feel smarter after a few beers. After our marriage broke up, my manager became very philosophical. "I guess it was in our genes," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Her sign was the one for earth, mine is the one for water. Together we make mud." He was a man aboard an airplane and seated next to an air marshal and his sniffing dog. Soon the plane takes off and the marshal says, "Sniffer, search." The dog walks around the aisle, stops next to the woman. He then returns to his seat and puts a paw on the marshal's arm. "Good boy," said the marshal. "What happened?" asked the man. "That woman is in possession of marijuana. We'll arrest her when we land." Once again, Sniffer searched the aisles. He stops beside the man, then returns to his seat and places 2 paws on the marshal's arms. "That man is carrying cocaine. We'll arrest him when we land." The dog walks up and down the aisle again, then races back, jumps into his seat, and moves all over. "What's going on?" I said. The marshal nurse said, "Well, he just found a bomb." And there was a police officer stopped Aurelia for speeding and asked her very nicely if you could see her driver's license. She replied in a huff, "I wish you guys could get your act together. Just yesterday, you took away my license, and now you want to show it to me back." Then when I was 9 years old, I accompanied my father to a funeral of a friend of his, someone I didn't even know. When we got there, I stayed in the corner waiting for time to pass. Then a man approached me and said, "Enjoy life, kid. Be happy because time flies. Look at me now. I didn't enjoy it. Then he passed his hand over my head and left. My father, before leaving, forced me to say goodbye to the dead person. When I looked in the coffin, I was horrified to see the man in the coffin was the same man who had spoken to me. I was so traumatized I couldn't sleep properly. I had terrible nightmares. I was terrified of being alone. I couldn't sleep without a light on for many, many years. I saw many psychologists and lived much turmoil through my adolescent years. It got better as I aged, but still occasionally would wake up screaming in fear. Years later, I discovered something incredible that changed my life. The dead bastard had a twin. Three dead bodies turned up at the mortuary with all big smiles on their faces. The coroner called the police to tell them what had happened. First body, Frenchman, 60, died of a heart attack while making love to his mistress, hence the enormous smile. Second body, Scotsman, 25, won 1,000 pounds on the lottery, spent it all on whiskey, died of alcohol poisoning, hence the smile. The inspector said, well, what about the third body? Ah, said the coroner, this is the most unusual one. Billy Bob, the redneck from Oklahoma, 30, struck by lightning. Why is he smiling then? Thought he was having his picture taken. All right, that's all. I leave you with a couple of quotes. Never let your emotions overpower your intelligence. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Today's fines. If you've been to a NASCAR race, that's $1. Ever. If you've had Girl Scout cookies, ever, that's $1.
I can tell.
Including fine. If you've ever ridden in the subway, that's $1. If you've ever been to Las Vegas, that's $1. Even you say God bless you when someone else sneezes, that's $1. And if you're not wearing your rotary gown, that's $1. Before I turn this over, there's something I want to come with from Dottie Mead. She's involved in this thing called On Our Sleeves. It's a donation where with $25 we get a tag goodies for a teacher to help them with their classroom. I will send the email out to everyone because there's a link on there. If you want to be involved in it, you can do that. I guess there's a little bit of a competition between some of the clubs and at least the district governors that are coming in. So hopefully we can do something about that. So, and with that, David, you're.
Thanks, Tom. You took everybody's money and then told them how they can donate. I thought we're building a new building for our Rotary meetings with those fines. All right. We had another guest. I don't think they were introduced. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's just.
Wow.
Right at the top. Yeah, it was the beard that did it. Yeah. Happy Bucks. Who's got a happy buck? Yes, sir.
So my daughter's basketball team, she plays for the Ohio Christian Schools Athletic Association. They've been in the state tournament 3 times in a row. This year they got the #1 seed on the left side. So in March we'll figure out if they're state champions.
All right. Awesome. Other happy bucks. Jim?
I got a happy buck. My wife and I celebrated our 58th wedding anniversary earlier this week.
All right. Who else has a happy buck? Brandon. I remembered your name.
Yeah, Brandon. I've been traveling along. I apologize. I'll do 13. There's 5+ years ago, I ran a 1:12:26 half marathon in Indianapolis. And then the following spring, I got a stress fracture in my foot and another one. It's taken a long time, but last week I finally got back and I beat my personal best of 1:12:13 in Arizona last week. And so it's just a long time coming. So $1 for each second I took off. 13.
That's awesome.
And then I had 5 hours before I flew out. So of course I went to the Botanical Garden. You got to go to the Desert Botanical Garden in Phoenix. It's just astonishing. We got 15 new bird species and broke over 400. So 404 now. And then lastly, Ashley had her final ultrasound, last week and everything looks great. And so March 17th is what we're tracking. So we're not. Great.
Who else has a happy birthday?
Representative Blanchard. Beaver Creek men's basketball last home game is this evening against Fairmont. They are 9-4, second in the GWalk conference. Fairmont is 7-6. Couple of notes from our season. The number 22 is the coach's son. 6 seconds left in the Wayne game. We're down by a point. He drives the entire court and scores as the buzzer goes off to beat Wayne. And then 2 weeks ago, I forget who we were playing. It was a halftime buzzer beater. He made the shot from well beyond half court. Wow. Unbelievable. Longest shot any of us have ever seen. So that should have been worth 5 points, but it's only worth 3.
Maybe it's worth 5 heavy bucks.
You already cleaned me out.
That was rough, man. See, if you tried out or decide to put your name in the hat to be sergeant at arms, you could use the paint. Who else has a happy buck? Yeah, a hockey update?
Oh, yeah, hockey update. So, Beaver Creek and the Swashel, they came in a power third. Troy was first, Alter was second. I'm so impressed with Alter this year. They had literally enough to put on the ice and 2 on the bench. So pound for pound, they were the most amazing team I got to see play this year. But tonight we get to go to Columbus. It's the first of the state championships. We'll see where we go with those, but hopefully we don't get too far because trips to Columbus really wear on you.
All right. So you wanted to do well, but not that one.
POD tournament in the spring, that's the end of their season. So last year they were playing the POD tournament in the afternoon and state championships in the morning. And so it's a lot. I'm just saying for the guy.
Any other happy bucks? All right, let's do the ticket drawing. So we're down to only a few cards. Half of the proceeds go to support our Christmas basket project for the chance to draw a Queen of Hearts and win. You are looking for ticket number 338884. I saw a pen adjusting the game.
This is I just started.
Is that what is it in Hearts? It is in Hearts.
All right, and do you have any announcements? He'll say we have a board meeting, a quick board meeting after the regular meeting here today. There are no other announcements. I ask Pete Bales to come forward and introduce our speaker.
So thank you.
Joe, you're gonna be the speaker next week about how to win at the Queen of Hearts.
All that money I lost in Vegas.
Right. Well, I have great pleasure to introduce our esteemed speaker today, Alicia Murray. It was about 1 year ago, she was appointed the Chief Executive Officer at Daybreak. Alicia brings with her a wealth of experience and a profound commitment to serving the youth of our communities. Alicia's journey to this leadership role has been marked with dedication and expertise in the field of youth services. With over 20 years of experience in direct care and supervision, she has played pivotal roles in supporting homeless youth through various capacities, including serving as an associate clinical director and housing manager at Daybreak for the last 11 years. Her steadfast leadership as chief program officer during the COVID pandemic produced a lot of challenges that required a lot of resiliency and capability. And throughout her tenure, she has demonstrated a deep understanding of the complexities surrounding homelessness and a passion for crafting comprehensive solutions. Her commitment to the well-being and empowerment of youth has earned her the trust and admiration of her colleagues and the community. After a year on the job, she remains unwavering in her dedication to the mission of Daybreak. Her vision for the organization's future is rooted in compassion, innovation, and collaboration. With her leadership, Daybreak will continue to be a beacon of hope for the homeless and at-risk youth in the Miami Valley, providing essential services and support for those who need it most. Please join me in welcoming Alicia Murray.
Thank you, Pete. Actually, that was a really impressive introduction. What are you talking about? I'm Alicia Murray. I'm the CEO of Daybreak, located in Dayton, Ohio. I did have a PowerPoint, but I thought I would just wing it and just talk to you all and share a little bit about what we do at Daybreak in Dayton, Ohio. So Daybreak was founded in 1975. It initially started as a group home for over the years, based on the trends and needs of the community, it became an emergency shelter for all youth. And then from there, it's expanded to what it is today, having emergency shelter on site, housing, as well as a host of different services. A little bit about who we serve at Daybreak. Roughly, there's 1,800 youth in Dayton or Montgomery County that we know of that are at least homeless. About those 1,800, only 800 are we seeing annually in a year. Our hope is to expand our reach and trying to meet the numbers of what we're seeing statistically so it aligns with who we're actually serving in real time. With that being said, we serve ages 10 to 24, which is daunting because we do have young people as young as 10 years old in our shelter. In our emergency shelter, we have what's called a minor wing that serves ages 10 to 17. And then we have a young adult shelter that services 18 to 22. But the span of our services goes all the way up to ages 25, who we're able to serve in our housing. When you think about points of entry, we work with a lot of community providers to find our youth throughout the community. So we work with Greene County or all the counties, children's services. We also work with juvenile justice. We try to partner with the local schools because a lot of our youth may find ways to get to school, but maybe experiencing housing instability. We also work with the local adult shelters where our youth actually may show up there, but really are more appropriate for our services that we provide. I will say Daybreak is the only youth serving homeless program in Montgomery County. So that kind of puts the weight on us as far as meeting the needs that are throughout the community. With that being said, we also have what's called a drop-in center. Our drop-in center is designed to target youth that are more transient in their homelessness. So they may be living in cars, abandoned buildings, on the street, or maybe even couch hopping at family's house. So the hope is to get them in the doors. They may come in and access our services as far as showering, getting a bite to eat, actually taking a nap, because typically where they're staying is not safe. So they come to us needing actually an opportunity to sleep. We also provide them with clothing if they need it, or the opportunity to wash the clothes they may have. That's open throughout the week. We have what's called a 24-hour hotline, or if a youth or young adult is in need of services, they can access that throughout the day and also in the evenings. As surprising as it is, I'm often asked, why are youth homeless? You know, you think of youth, they have parents, they have caregivers, but unfortunately, as you can imagine, based on what you're seeing in society, we have a lot of impoverished communities where, as we know, the youth that we serve, 100% of our youth are impoverished, either currently or came from environments that could not provide their basic needs. I was talking earlier today, and I was sharing that most of our youth, probably about 80% or more, have had some involvement with children's services. So throughout their lifetime, whether before they came to us or throughout their childhood, they've been exposed to abuse and neglect. When you factor that with mental health issues, housing instability, possible involvement with the justice system, it creates a very complex youth that we have to serve. Our hope is to provide wraparound services because our youth have complexity in their needs. We provide a host of different services to help with that. So for instance, we have Lindy's. So I'll tell you a little funny story. Linda Kramer, who was the former CEO before she retired in 2021, came up with Lindy's. Lindy's was designed to provide a place for our youth to learn job skills in addition to making dog treats. They ended up adding cat treats as well, but mostly they did dog treats. It was a great idea because what we saw happen was our youth had the platform to learn what it was like to work. A lot of our youth have poor work history. They may have been in environments where their caregivers did not have jobs. So this was the opportunity to give them a space, teach them soft skills and what it meant to earn a stipend. Because we couldn't pay them a wage, we kind of gave them a stipend in exchange for it being a training program. Needless to say that the treats were a hit. Unfortunately, COVID happened, so we had to pivot from making dog treats. But I'm happy to say that Lenny's now provides all the meals for our shelter youth. So in exchange for making the dog treats, our youth have the opportunity to prepare meals. So to provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner for our youth that stay in the shelter. I say all this to say it's been inspiring to watch our youth gain those skills and understand the importance of employment while they're navigating their housing instability, because we all know that income will help them maintain housing stability. In addition to that, we have clinical services. A lot of our youth and young adults come to us having, again, complexity in their needs, which may result in them having a mental health condition. So we have clinical staff that provide them with therapeutic services, as well as case management services to help them more or less gain stability from mental health perspective, but also while they're trying to gain their housing stability and moving forward. In addition to that, our housing program, we have approximately 100 apartments in our scattered site community, which we have throughout Montgomery County, in addition to the 24 apartments that we actually have on site at our building. It's been amazing because our youth transition from the shelters into these apartments, and we were able to provide them with things for their basic needs. What does that mean? They have an apartment that basically we furnish because we understand they don't have the capabilities of providing that for themselves. So they have the opportunity to move into apartment space where we help them navigate how to manage an apartment, whether it's paying bills, whether it's getting a job and budgeting their money. Nonetheless, they're given the skills are needed to help them when they graduate from our program, be able to sustain in the community. I say all this to say that working with youth and young adults, it does bring challenges. But what's inspiring is the youth come to us with a sense of wanting to change their life. I even had a young lady tell me a few years ago when I asked her, why did she come to Daybreak? What was she hoping to get? And her response was, I deserve better. She unfortunately had a life where she dealt with a lot of abuse and neglect, exposure to things that she shouldn't have been exposed to, that sadly ended up her being homeless and at our doorstep. To hear her say that I deserve better was really inspiring for me because it let me know that our youth understand that you have a purpose and they're not here by accident. So she wanted to make the most of her life and be able to have things that others had. With all that being said, we did add David's Place in 2021. David's Place was designed to create a safe space for our LGBTQIA+ population. We had saw nationally that 40% of our youth identify with that population, but sadly we're only seeing about 20% of that. So this was our hopes of expanding our reach once again and hoping that we could open the doors to a population that we clearly were underserving. Since Davis Place opening in 2021, we continue to see our numbers climb in that we are reaching that population because the word is getting out about that safe space that we provide. I say all this to say, I don't want to just keep rambling. Davis Place, as well as Daybreak, are unique places for our youth to access in hopes of achieving whatever their goals are, in hopes of ending, whether it's chronic homelessness or just any kind of instability. It is our goal and our endeavor to make sure that we reach all of our youth and help them accomplish those goals. The hope is to help them get prepared for society. Because we also understand too that most youth, and you guys who have children, you set your youth up for success. You parent them, you provide them with morals and values, and you instill in them the skills needed to become successful adults. Unfortunately, the youth that we see in our agency have not been given those opportunities. So it's our hope to give them that platform where they can have all those things so they too can be thriving and successful adults. So if I would leave you with anything about Daybreak, is that we strive hard to meet the needs of the youth in our community. We understand the work is daunting, being the only youth serving program in the community, but it's something in which we do not take lightly. But we also understand that there's a purpose and need for all of our youth to be successful in the community. So thank you for your time. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Would you talk about the funding? Where do you get your money from and how does that work?
So we have a diverse funding range where a lot of our money comes from the federal government because we do have HUD-based housing that we provide on site and in the community. We also have grants that we apply for, whether through foundations or through state programs. And then lastly, we have donors. Donors play a huge role because typically the funding that we get from the federal government or from our grants, they hold us to certain restrictions that we have to use the funding for certain things. So donors allow us to provide services where the other funding doesn't touch, more or less. So it's a unique way for us to be sustaining, and thankfully we've had enough funding to keep us sustained.
Are you a 501c3?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Do you partnership at all with the public schools?
We do. So we have what's called the McKinsey-Vento Liaison through Dayton Public Schools. There's actually a federal law with the McKinsey-Vento Act. It basically, I'm just going to paraphrase it. It provides services to all individuals or students that are homeless, regardless of where they stay. So we have a liaison through DPS that we work with in identifying youth that are dealing with housing instability in the communities to get them linked to us as well. Yes. Yes.
What are the greatest challenges that you face?
So I was telling Dave earlier, we stay at capacity in our adult shelter. So the minor age shelter, ages 10 to 17, a lot of factors tie youth to coming into that space. Typically, children's services, juvenile justice, and maybe coming from homes themselves. But the length of stay in there typically is about 3 days in our youth minor wing, and at most typically 21 days. But generally, our goal is, because they're minors, to get them out, obviously, as quick as we can, getting them linked to other systems that may be of help. The adult shelter works a little bit different. We stay at capacity in our adult shelter to the point that when we have filled all of our beds, and we have a total of 16 beds, which is not a lot when you think about the community. So 16 adult beds, 8 beds for minor wing, 25 beds total, not a lot of beds. So we end up sending a lot of our youth to the adult shelters. Problem with that is there's a lot of predatory behavior that goes in the adult shelters. So ideally sending an 18-year-old and 19-year-old to the adult shelter, we understand there's risk associated with that. So we partner with the adult shelters by sending our staff and working alongside their staff to identify our youth to get them linked to our services as soon as we can. But one of the problems is we don't have enough bed space in our emergency shelter. We need a larger facility.
And you kind of talk a little bit about this, how you collaborate with other agencies.
We have, so Montgomery County is interesting, and I'm not saying this because I reside there. It's resource dense in the sense of a lot of nonprofits, while they may have a certain niche in who they're serving, there's a lot of commonalities in who they're serving. So for instance, we partner with Goodwill. We partner with them because obviously they have a niche of services where our reach can't reach. So serving youth that are homeless, ages 10 to 24, we understand we only have them for a snapshot. That's really not a lot of time when they're coming in at 21, 22 to help prepare them for adulthood. So we try to partner with agencies that are complementary, that can follow them longer. For instance, Goodwill and Easter Sales, they can work with them from the cradle to the grave. So we try to work with agencies, and that's one of our huge endeavors where we can't reach. they can continue to work with our youth to help ensure their self-sufficiency. Dave?
Yes, I have a question about providing the medical and mental health services to minors and how that works if, with parents or if they're in the custody of.
So question. So what happens is there's actually a rule at daybreak where a youth fleeing abuse and neglect, we have 24 hours to notify caregivers, the authorities. That gives us time to collect pertinent information to determine if this youth is actually at risk or not, and then who we should actually be contacting, whether it's the family, police, or children's services. Once we identify who the caregiver is, they have consent to stay there. So that's the window. 24 hours is a window for a youth to stay with us without caregiver approval. Once we establish that, we have to then get consent for treatment or to provide services. Depending on who the holder of that is, we typically go down that angle to gain that consent.
Do you collaborate with St. Vincent de Paul?
Yes.
I know they put up a lot of people too.
They do. That was who I was kind of referring to earlier, that when our youth are able to stay with us, we work with the local adult systems. So St. Vincent de Paul, they have a family center on Apple Street, which is literally in walking distance from where we're located. And then they have Gateway, which is further down the road off of Gettysburg, that serves the men's shelter. Again, when our youth are able to stay with us, we're reaching out to their staff there and partnering to make sure that we identify our youth in those settings. Yes, sir.
You're in Montgomery County. I'm sure the commissioners give you money.
We do get city funding, which kind of
City or county or both?
city, we get more city funding.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so do you have any restrictions on your clientele? Do you accept people from Greene County?
Yes. Yes.
There's no restriction.
There's no restriction. And the reason why, it's actually a really good question, because we do see an influx of youth coming from other areas throughout Ohio to our services. Because again, we're the only youth serving service agency of our kind in Montgomery County. We do have what's called a sister agency in Cincinnati called Lighthouse. They have similar services to us, but uniquely they deal more on the foster care end, where we partner with the children's services, but we're not a foster care entity. And there is Huck House in Columbus, and there's Belfair in Cleveland. But nonetheless, once a youth hits Montgomery County, they're a resident of Montgomery County.
Once they
enter, yes, because now typically when they've been identified as homeless, they now have our address, so to speak, which thus makes them a Montgomery County resident.
So when you're full, who do you turn them up?
The adult shelters. Yes, the adult shelters. But we find, because some of those spaces are, again, challenging for our youth to navigate, that's where a lot of our youth are willing to stay on the streets. Or they will stay in abandoned buildings, or they'll stay in cars, literally physically in the woods. We have some youth that come to us asking for tent equipment because they don't feel safe staying in the adult shelters, and they rather take the chance of living on the street, which is why our drop-in center that we have, oftentimes youth come in there and take a nap because they were they're staying the night before, obviously wasn't safe, coming into our space, they're kind of getting their bearings.
Very good, thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, Steve.
What is the average length of stay for your youth? I mean, do you work also with the Dayton Public Schools to make sure that they're going to school or whatever?
Is it Betty? They had asked that a little bit a while ago. We do work with DPS, Dayton Public Schools, and we have our McKinsey-Vento liaison that we partner with. We try to ensure that our students go to school. Because of that act, if a youth is staying in our shelter, they are obligated to get transportation. So oftentimes, depending upon how long they're going to be with us, we will have buses come to our site and pick up youth so they can actually get to school. Unfortunately, since COVID, as you guys can imagine, the dropout rate for students is just astronomical. A lot of youth have not returned to school. So we are seeing a lot of youth that may have dropped out of school, and trying to even get them back into school is problematic because they may have lost some time, credits. So we do a lot of credit recovery programs with them through the schools, or we help them get their GED or other certifications or trainings. But education is really a huge barrier. Getting back to one of your questions, that would be actually another one to identify, that we lost a little bit of that because of COVID. Yes, sir.
Are you set up
to take in either youths or adults with developmental or intellectual disabilities, or do you use other agencies?
Good question. So that will be another challenge that we're facing. About what you said earlier. So because we get what's called gapper youth. Youth that for whatever reason throughout their childhood were not linked to appropriate services. So unfortunately, we're seeing an influx of youth that cognitively speaking, we actually had a youth that had an IQ of 64, which is pretty low functioning wise. Somehow they were able to not get linked to certain services. Nonetheless, we still serve them. So our hope is when we get youth that clearly may require higher level of care, more additional needs, we then connect them to other services. The challenge with that is if they weren't previously linked to developmental disabilities or have certain documentation in place, there's challenges in getting them linked to DDS when they're an adult. So we strive hard to link them to services, but during that time, we still try to help them get their basic skills in place so they can hopefully live independently to the best of their ability. But it is something we're seeing an increase in. Yes.
I work with Greene County Juvenile Court. Do you provide respite care for the courts, so that break when a kid gets in a domestic violence situation with their parents? We can't keep them in detention, but parents are saying, no, I'm not going to come pick Johnny up. Would you serve a youth like that?
So the problem with that, because that's the issue we have with Montgomery County Juvenile Court, is that the minute they are entered into our programs, they're rendered homeless. So that's the piece where respite isn't the most appropriate, because if they have a home to return to, typically it's not the best avenue. The issue that we would end up serving, because we've had this happen in Montgomery County, is if it's unsafe or parents do not allow access for the child to return home, then technically they are homeless, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
Yeah, it gets kind of that tricky line, but any youth that we serve, they've been identified or rendered homeless for whatever the case may be. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. And as is our custom, we will be donating a book to the community library on behalf of Alicia program. It's very important. My encyclopedia of very important adventures. All right. So next week, we are going to have a presentation by Jackie Mayer of the Beavercreek Wetlands. Our greeters are Sandy Brubaker and Dick Gould. Keep an eye on Facebook and our other outlets for things coming up with the club. Does anybody else have any announcements or anything for the good of the club? Okay, everybody will rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Anybody have a mission? No, I think it's nice. I introduce anybody joining us on Zoom or this meeting. That should be on board meeting. No, that's not on board. It is early. Okay. You know what? I should say something about Girl Scout cookies. Oh, no. Okay.